Everybody, super excited to host our latest session of SpecialeTalks. We're back after a little break since we did the last talk. SpecialeTalks is a series of conversations with early stage founders and operators building great products and great companies. And our goal from these conversations is to learn as much from these awesome operators and founders so that the rest of the community can gain and use them in their journey of building great products and companies. All right. This is run by Speciale Invest. I'm one of the founding partners here. We're a pre-seed, seed focused fund based, doing stuff in deep technology startups, right? Two broad buckets: enterprise software and SaaS with cutting edge products at the heart of the business, and enterprise hardware companies, engineering companies, right, that are genuinely frontier tech is the other flavor in our portfolio. We've been around for about 6 years, invested in about 30 plus companies, and investing out of our latest fund, which is about $40 million. Our typical check size is about $500,000 in the very early stage. Typically want to be the first institutional investor in these companies and help work very closely with founders to get product market fit, to build the early team, and to scale up capital from there on. All right. So that's a little background for us. Super excited to talk about today's topic about, which is, D2C companies and the tools that enable D2C brands and companies to be built, right? We all know in the last few years how amazing the infrastructure and the platforms that have been created to build D2C companies or to make D2C brands deliver better and great results. And we want to talk and go really deep into this part of the ecosystem today. To have that conversation, we have Nikhil Gupta today as our special guest. He's the co-founder at LimeChat, right? Building conversational AI tools that enable D2C companies to manage their conversations with customers, right, on multiple platforms. Nikhil, welcome to the conversation. Super excited to chat with you and learn a lot about the D2C world and the infrastructure tools that go along with it. Please talk about a little about yourself and what you're building.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Arjun, for kind of arranging this. I always like talking about the journey, about what we're building, because it's exciting to me. It's exciting to be part of something in this space around conversational AI. So I'll try to give you a little bit of background about myself so that the viewers out there please know a little bit about my background, about what I've done. So primarily in terms of skill set, I am actually a computer science engineer. So I have dabbled in a lot of AI, ML related kind of technologies, done a lot of research in those fields. I went to IT Delhi, kind of did engineering over there, and actually started up in the final year of my time in IT Delhi. Eventually, we actually started off by building a different startup. Me and my co-founder, his name is Aniket. Aniket was my batchmate at IT Delhi. He also is a technocrat. He was also a researcher in AI and ML. So we kind of actually came from a very similar background, but we're very two different types of people. And that kind of helped us come together and start something. And so our first company, it was called Conscience. That was around social media, campaigning, etc. But we eventually pivoted from that and we started our company today, and that is called LimeChat. The objective of LimeChat is to solve one global problem, and that is to build out or become global leaders for this new wave of what we call conversational commerce. Right. The way we look at it is that at least in India or around the world, the decades of the 2000s was when consumerism kind of grew, it blossomed. And the decade after that, 2010s, 2010, 2020, is when we saw a rise of e-commerce. People got accustomed to it, not just in India, but outside of India, across the world. And we believe that now that there's so much infrastructure around e-commerce, what's next? What's really going to define this particular decade, starting from 2020, 2030, right? And when we were sitting at the cusp of 2020, at the start of the pandemic, we decided that, it's time. We're at the right place at the right time. A lot of things actually came in place. Even the technology, even the fact that we had the experience in that technology, the pain points were becoming more acute. COVID also came. All of these things came. So it was the turn of this decade as well. We felt it was the right time to think about what's big or what's next in this space. And we put our heart and soul behind this concept of conversational commerce. And yeah, we've been driving that ever since for the past 2.5 years now. In this journey, yeah.
No, very cool. Sorry, if you could just talk about how big is the firm, right? Where are you at in your journey? It's about 2.5 years. Just a headline view there for the viewers.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic journey. I would say lots of ups and downs, but in the end, as long as the goal is set, we can do wonders. I mean, at this point of time, we are working with approximately 200 brands here in India, including some of the largest brands, household names like Mama Earth, Boston Science, Neiman Shoes, Mosaic Wellness. So it's been fantastic working with so many companies, especially the companies that it's something tangible. People can actually see those companies, so they recognize that, oh, you're working with them. One thing I love about our product is that it's so actionable. Everyone can use it. It's not just a tool that's internalized within a company. Not only is it internalized within a company, that means the company also loves it, but it's also its customers. And so we have to build something that's great, that everyone likes. It becomes a lot of fun. Right now, we've been primarily focused on India, and actually, as we speak, we're actually doing a US expansion right now. So taking our technology, making them another India-born SaaS-based company and trying to make it global. That is what we're trying to do. We feel that we've done a certain amount of justice. I mean, there's a long way to go about making this concept of conversational commerce a reality. Otherwise, who knows how many years it will have taken to actually get started. But we wanted to be one of the first pioneers of this particular vision. And we feel that we have moved it along considerably in the Indian ecosystem, but now it's time, how do we take it global? That's some of the challenges that we have in front of us now.
No, very cool. Thank you so much for sharing. Super exciting to hear. So I'm going to kick off sort of the conversation by asking you a little bit about the macro, space of D2C, right? I don't necessarily remember hearing the term D2C a few years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? It was all e-commerce.
Yeah.
Correct? And then there was this thing about D2C and specific brands, niche product categories, niche customer categories, and that sort of is direct to customers, right? And that's a full wave. We've of course seen the emergence of a behemoth now almost, which is Shopify, right? That has really changed the game, and that has really been a credible competitor to the larger e-commerce players, right? And that is a big shift. You're also building on top of and building towards the customer base that is working on top of Shopify and maybe others as well. And you can talk about that, right? And this is what has happened. So how do you see this macro view of this industry? What should founders today that are looking at this industry and saying, hey, I want to build for this industry or around this industry, what should they know? What should they be cognizant about? And what should get them excited?
Absolutely. I think first of all, that's actually a great question to ask. Actually understanding what D2C is. I mean, when we even started, we said D2C a lot, and people were like, you mean B2C? We're like, no, D2C. They're like, what is D2C? We don't know what it is. It wasn't a thing, right? Marketplaces is how things kind of evolved from. But it's very interesting to see the shift. There's a lot of problems when you're only a marketplace dependent company, actually, as a brand. So there are a lot of factors that came into bringing this revolution about. And there's certain facts of life, as I would say. There's just certain ways of operating a business that are better. And shifting away from marketplaces into D2C is just that foundationally better it's a better choice for companies to take for multiple reasons. Number one, they're actually getting customer data, which is typically extracted away from them on marketplaces, and they don't have control. So the fact that they don't have control makes it very difficult for them to do any type of decision-making or data-driven decision-making, not only on how to improve the brand, but also on how to take control of the market. They're completely dependent on this third party, for example, in Amazon or Flipkart. And so by shifting some of that focus away, and that's something we've seen over the past couple of years, that the percentage, if you look at the percentage split of the amount of e-commerce that is done on marketplaces as compared to the amount of e-commerce done on D2C brands or on their own websites, that the percentage has shifted, or it's shifting in the favor of D2C brands themselves. That means more and more people, more and more consumers have started to shift on that trend. And that is the reason why is because D2C brands want that to happen. It's their own products. They want to promote maybe more extra discounts or other ways. I mean, there's a lot of techniques over there. But once they get those customers on their own platform, they're able to grasp that customer. They're able to capture all the data points around it. If that customer's on their homepage, they can see what products they're browsing. Not only is a purchase on a marketplace, very honestly, the only information they get is someone has purchased X amount of a certain product, and this is the warehouse where to ship it to. Now, You have options of capturing repeat purchases. You have an option of seeing how people are browsing things, how people are adding things to cart. Have they done an abandoned checkout? Have they, what is it, like, maybe sending out promotions to them in different ways of forms, on emails, SMS, etc., which are traditionally things you cannot do on marketplaces. So the benefits about how things would look like 5 years down the line for a brand, you got to think ahead. It's not just, okay, right now I have one killer product which has sold well on Amazon. That doesn't make you a brand anymore, right? That's the reality of it. It's so easy to launch something that you have to. So now what has happened is that in this transition, for brands to kind of certainly survive right now, it's not about being single product driven. You have to have a plethora of products. You have to have a suite of products, and you have to build a brand around it. And that takes effort. It used to be so easy that you give all of this logistics cost, support cost, even to a certain degree, your inventory, warehousing, everything is done by places like Amazon or Flipkart. But if you're taking that whole onus upon you, where you're maintaining the website, you're maintaining the logistics, you're maintaining the experience also, the customer engagement also, now you understand why this becomes difficult. It's not just, the people who are great at building D2C brands are people who do great marketing. If you ask me what's the biggest strength of a brand right now, what brands do really well, they're people who understand their customers and who do the right type of marketing. Now that's their core strength. The founders of these D2C brands are great marketers, but what about everything else they need right now, the tech stack? That's what a marketplace used to provide for you. You had to just do the marketing. You had to show the right type of ads, and they would go to Amazon and buy your product, right? D2C, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's why over the last 2 years, as you mentioned, that ecosystem has grown because the shift is happening. A fundamental shift is happening. If you look at what the marketplace might look, or the ecosystem, the D2C ecosystem might look like after 5 years, you would see that maybe the percentage has skewed in favor of D2C brands itself. Who knows what's going to happen? And when that happens, they need that infrastructure. So it's like what happened with Shopify. When Shopify started, it was competing with the likes of Wix.com, right? And these are verticalized. They were not verticalized. Shopify was very verticalized on one particular domain that we're going to build only for e-commerce. And at that moment of time, it looked like a too small of a market, right? But
yeah, I think I would have thought about it as just a website builder of sorts, right?
Yeah, that's what Wix does. Wix is a website builder of sorts, right? And they're like, and Wix was much, much larger before Shopify even came into the picture. But the verticalization about saying that forward thinking that in the next 5 years, people will be shifting. So they understood that trend. So they understood that D2C is going to become a thing, and they capitalized on it when it happened in the US. The same thing is happening now in India. It happened when we were starting, maybe in 2019, 2018, it had that trend had started. So the need of these tools became apparent, at least when we were there, when we started in March of 2020, it became very apparent that it's okay to verticalize on just this particular sector itself because it's going to grow rapidly. And can we build the right type of focused tools to help them in each and every aspect that they don't have to think about it? And as you've seen the ecosystem grow, all these different type of tools that have come into the system, they solve each and every problem, and they solve it end to end. So these brands don't have to think about it. And now all of these products themselves, the next phase is them integrating with each other, right? For example, with LimeChat, we integrate with almost all of the major players on the market. So it creates a very tight circle of how everything just ebbs and flows together in a replacement of this Amazon or Flipkart. It's a very exciting kind of space. There are a lot of challenges, like I would say. We can go deeper into them, but at a high level, if you have great marketing experience, I think, and if you have the will, then there is a way now, at least here in 2022.
No, very interesting. And I'm particularly going to pick up on the point about, obviously, the best D2C founders or teams are best at marketing, and that's at the heart and soul of building a great brand, right? And then now if they can own the customer in some sense, right, which is owning the customer data and really understanding the customer behavior and preferences deeply, then they can really innovate better, reach out better, message better, and sell better, right? And the space that you are also operating in is providing them these tools and tech, stacks, right, that make their life easy on all the other parts, right? So that they can continue to really focus on being great marketers and be great brand builders, correct? There is already Shopify, which is again a massive company. They have so many features themselves on the platform. make it super easy for a brand to set up and set shop and start selling. Correct? How should one think about the ecosystem and say what are the gaps and what are the opportunities available for other tech tools and opportunities, right, in the stack to build towards to solve for the D2C founders?
Oh, absolutely. You have to understand that, first of all, you're absolutely right. There's this big behemoth, Shopify. But the thing is, it's not the only one. There's a lot of other alternative websites or platforms that people start using right now. And with each one comes its own set of problems, right? And if you look at the different aspects that you mentioned about open spaces right now in this particular ecosystem, right? For SaaS companies to actually come and build. I think it's almost like people said, if you look at the Shopify App Store, right, it just answers that question really well. I mean, you might say, how can there be 10,000 apps on an app store when there's already a Shopify? What do brands really need? Are there really that many problems to solve? And the answer is always problems to solve, right? It depends on your particular type of product, what you're trying to sell. It depends on who your target group is. And in like, for example, geography-wise, for example, in India, there's a very different type of problem. For example, here, there's a concept called RTO, return to origin, which is people returning their products back instead of actually completing the purchase when it comes. They're using options like COD, cash on delivery, a lot. Those are not things that are seen very actively outside of maybe South Asia. So those kind of things come up with, they have their own challenges. So the geography in which you're working in, the domain in which you're selling, the type of people, your target audience, etc. All of these kind of come together and they create a different set of problems. Now that's just one aspect. There's another axis of one is time, and one is how technology is also moving. So what happens is with time, there's economic upturns, downturns. For example, now there's a downturn. So what happens is people's priorities start changing. If you asked a D2C founder a year ago, what is the biggest problem? They would say CAC. Yeah, I would understand. They would still say CAC. But how honestly, how much effort and time are they putting in to really reduce their CAC at the moment? They're like, it's okay. I understand it's a problem, but what can we do? Now it is a do or die situation because of this economic downturn. There's less capital in the market. You just throw around on marketing. And since there are more companies that have grown, the competition has increased, ad spend has increased, CAC is going through the roof, and now there's less cash flow to actually mitigate it. So that has become a must-have problem to solve. So now apps which are targeting CAC have an open field. They're much more likely to sell. So if you can track different problems over there, you'll be able to build a good business. Another aspect to think about it is the type of technologies or how the landscape is changing. Now, I would say that that's kind of how we thought about it as well. With the advent of opening the WhatsApp API for businesses, it created a different platform altogether. Now, that's where you can build a business. That's what we capitalized on. So as soon as the APIs were live, we were like, hey, this could become like WeChat kind of broke out in China. Why can't this work out in India? So we put our whole effort around how. So our pitch to brands at that moment of time was, here's this brand new shiny channel of WhatsApp. We'll help you unlock its potential and get you outcomes through it. You don't know there's no playbook around it, right? No one knows how to use it effectively, but we're focused and we were working with a lot of different brands, running a lot of experiments, and we'll eventually come and tell you what's the best way to work on it. And that's what works. So it's WhatsApp today. Instagram is another upcoming channel right now. They opened up their APIs just at the end of last year. So that there's a whole can of worms to open. Now, with each one of these new platforms, there's a whole bunch of apps that you can build or etc. Value addition to be solved. Checkout, the whole UPI system has come up. There's a whole e-commerce stack that the government of India is actually destined to build.
What is that? ONDC?
Yeah. ONDC. And it's going to change the game in so many different ways. No one even there's so many complexities around it. At the same time, there's so much potential around it. We don't even know how to change the game. But what it means is the landscape's always changing. There's always problems to solve. It's the people who really understand the core value. As long as you're adding value, people will buy. Now, that's how D2C brands have now been ingrained. They know that they have to buy tools. So the traditional company was like, hey, we'll build in-house. D2C brands are, no, we're going to stay lean. We cannot build everything in-house because the ROI is just not there. We cannot build these tools. It's easier and cheaper to just pay for it, and we'll focus our money on a marketing budget. So I believe it's for the years to come, actually. There's going to be a lot of different ideas and a lot of different spaces to build on.
Absolutely. I think great thoughts there. And again, picking up on, It depends on the customer profile, whether in the geography, what products they're selling, and therefore, and also, economic environment, correct? Picking up on that, let's particularly talk about the customer segmentation in some sense, right? Within D2C, right? There are smaller D2C brands, then there are mid-sized D2C brands, and then there are maybe large, right? And in our parlance, we talk about SMB, mid-market, and maybe enterprise, right? So how does, a company like yourself and any other SaaS company that is providing tools, how should they think about these segments? How should they think about solving problem for which segment, multiple segments, one of them, all of them, correct? Or start with one, go on to another. What are the pros and cons of some of these things? And maybe use your own data or use your own anecdotes by saying, okay, where is LimeChat most focused on?
Absolutely. That's actually a really good point about, this is another factor, this is another axis about which stage of their journey is that brand in, because each stage brings about its own problems, right? And there's multiple ways to classify. There's no one definition that you don't just turn, there's no threshold to turn from a mid-market to an enterprise. There's multiple factors that go into it. But yeah, I mean, starting off, I would say there are stages, at least how we think about it. I can just share that thought with you.
Sure.
There are a lot of companies which are, they have a hero product. And that's typically how you start. When you start a brand, there's going to be one major product or one major thesis or an idea. I mean, you launch on an idea, like I'll make an Ayurvedic brand, or it's going to have certain kind of thesis. And you have to do that. Having some certain type of thesis helps you build a good brand early on, very honestly. Otherwise, how do you differentiate? You cannot just be a beauty and personal care brand, right? So every brand, like if you look at all of them, for example, larger brands who've done well, they've built something on that brand. For example, Mama Earth, they have catered to the mom and baby audience about being very gentle with their products. They built their image around that. Now, when they launched, they would have one hero product, most of these brands. And the entire company is known by that product. And that's when you're in the very, very small stage. And it's just about how to get this product off the shelves off your website. And you're looking at some basic tools, right? There's not too many issues around around catalog management, because you don't have too many catalogs. Everything on Shopify actually takes care of most of your issues. You have your standard integrations with logistics that also take care of most of these things. Now, the problems that these companies would have is they just need visibility. How to get the product out there, and their caps are typically very high in the beginning, right? Because the brand is unheard of. So you have to think of innovative ways, hustle to kind of, low cost solutions to get the brand out there, maybe keeping kind of offline events in metro cities, etc. Right? Or they try to look at a TG that no one has really put a lot of focus on. So if you look at one way to kind of think about it, look at where all the marketing spend is going on Facebook. And you can actually analyze it, how each brand has created their own TGs and how much marketing money is going to each TG and how much outcome is coming from it. If you do a very numerical analysis, you might figure out some open spots where, maybe the ratio of amount of money being spent to the ROI being given is actually higher, and there's actually space. Not enough money is being fueled into it. That means there's potential
basically that you can solve for.
Yeah, that means basically the CACs are not high enough yet because there's not enough competition in that space. So you go after them. You would build a hero product to go after that particular TG, and you would try to monetize. And you can actually do a good job. So that's why a lot of brands are able to do 0 to 1 on this one product. Now, how do you go to the next stage? And that's where a lot of people, I think in the D2C space, that's a chasm of death for sure, right? How do you make a brand out of it? People have a lot of struggle. They think that, okay, they did well with one product. They just launched another product, it'll do equally well, right? And they typically struggle with the second product or the third product or the fourth product, right? But that's a stage of going from a very small brand into a mid-market brand when they have a series of products and the distribution of sales is at least amongst the top 10 of their SKUs, right? A good 80% of the sales is not just happening with one product, it's happening with the top 10 of the product. So that's when they graduate. That they're successfully able to build a brand. That means that brand has a set of products that associate, and it's not known for just that product, it's known for the brand now. So that's when, at least how we think about it. If the brand, we look at how, so again, if you want numbers and you think about it numerically, we look at the sales data for the different type of SKUs that they have. And we look at the top 10 SKUs and we look at the 95 percentile as well. Only the top SKU and the top 10 SKUs, right? If the top SKU is more than 50%, there's a lot of imbalance, right? That means your company is majorly driven by that one product. And if you have it's like 80% across your top 10. That means you've spread it out and you're successful in getting people to buy other products of your line. And now you're known as a proper brand. Now they have different problems. Now, when you reach this stage, you have different problems. Now you have inventory management. Now you have things about multiple items in the cart. Maybe one item is manufactured, it's in stock. One item is not in stock. These are not the same type of problems you had at your early stage. So there's a huge set of new problems that's land up when you come to mid-market, right? And your advertisement costs are now starting to go up. So now you're starting to think about not just get out of the gates and get revenue, but you're also optimizing your cost centers as well. So that's when you transition into this mid-market. And that's when you actually, so these tools, these companies are the most primed, we call them mid-market brands, are most primed to buy tools. Because for the first time, they need optimization across different fronts. They've set things up and now they need optimization and they cannot build in-house.
Are there some interesting numbers that you have observed of saying companies with a hero brand, which is just a single brand or a single product, hero product that you mentioned, right? How many tools do they use versus how many tools do they use in phase 2, right? Tech tools. And then what do they use when they're more mature, right? And that's a way, for example, to say, and I'm assuming you're using that from your perspective, either LimeChat or any other tech tool company, SaaS company, to say, okay, what should be our GTM strategy? What should be our ICP when we launch the product?
Oh, absolutely. You understand, right? It's so different. The type of brand, the vertical of that brand, what stage are they in? Like we mentioned, there's so many axes to think about. So you talk about this word, and it's a very important thing to think about, the ICP. As a SaaS company, if you're selling a solution to these brands, you have to define a very strong ICP. Otherwise, you'll be all over the place, right? The small brand is going to eat up all your time and you won't be able to focus on the enterprise brand who can actually pay you money. But are you able, is your problem statement geared towards small brands? Because then that might not scale to large brands. So you have to be very clear on who you're selling to. And it's not so easy to actually transition between these segments. I think this is actually the biggest segment of differentiation, small, mid-market, and enterprise. They all have a very different way and outlook and different type of problems to solve. For example, a mid-market brand has one of the biggest problems of retention.
Right.
There's so many mid-market brands competing with them. I'll give you an example. If you look at the men's grooming space, there would be the Man Company, there would be Beardo, there would be Bombay Shaving Company. Very similar type of brands, all at different stages, but to the end consumer, they would constantly keep switching between them. So they've got to face.
Churn is very high. Customer churn is extremely high.
Customer curiosity is actually very high.
Okay, that's an interesting.
They buy one thing and then they're curious. They see an ad of another. Hey, let's try that out. I'm already used to this. Let's also try that out. Similar price points. Why not? So because of that curiosity, it's hard to retain. There's no real reason. I mean, there's no reason for a customer to stay loyal with a brand if you think about it.
Sure.
The switching cost is the easiest switching cost. I mean, there's zero retention cost. In the mind of the consumer to stay with a particular brand. So that's what he said. After a certain stage, it becomes about how to create customer loyalty. You can only drive retention if you can drive customer loyalty. And I'll get into how you can actually solve that as a problem. That's one of our main problem statements of how we thought about how we can bring personalization into the mix. By bringing personalization to maybe communication through like WhatsApp or Instagram, you can actually build a good relationship between the brand itself and the customer. It kind of feels hand in hand. And you can start building some sort of loyalty to it. And that changes the game. So we can see that as a reflection in how retention is increased with those brands who have opted to kind of build some sort of relationship with the customer, right? And those are the brands that eventually win out because every single few months in that particular space, there's going to be a new entrant saying that, hey, you're bored and tired of all of these old brands in this space. Let's say in the men's grooming space, we're a new men's grooming brand. And why not try us? And the customer's also like, hey, let's try them out. Why not? We're bored with the current selection. So I think that's one of the challenges in D2C. It's always going to be dynamic, always new brands coming in because the customer is very fickle-minded. It's not like electronics where you have built a brand based on like Apple, because the products that you're selling typically as D2C are very consumable products. They diminish, they don't matter as much, very honestly. So building on the customer loyalty would be a big problem for these mid-market brands. Enterprise becomes a whole different ballgame. They've already built a brand. they're thinking about, so the transition between mid-market and enterprise, if you think about it, they're starting to get offline. They're like, hey, let's get into stores. Let's start selling. Let's be everywhere in the face of the customer. We already have a brand. So I would say when you become a brand, an actual brand, so people know you, that is when you kind of move into enterprise. It's a good time to actually move into the shelves because people will recognize your brand and will actually buy you from the market. Right? They don't need a visual ad to tell you, oh, this product exists and it does well. If you see the product, you can actually buy it. That's the only good time to actually go offline. So that's a transition from mid-market to enterprise. Now, as you understand, huge problems now because now you're in retail also. Offline, online, new different ball game. They have to make sure that the customer experience is just good. Again, retention is one of the biggest focuses because in terms of marketing, they have most likely reached out to majority of the market.
It's not new customer acquisition.
It's not new customer acquisition. I mean, it's primarily still driven through new customer acquisition because, but you understand the marketing can only be so effective. So what happens is the primary revenue is still through new customer acquisition, but the cost of getting that customer has increased significantly. In fact, the CAC for a large enterprise client at times is even higher than a mid-market client, which might be counterintuitive. Wow. But it's only that factor of curiosity that makes it happen. And people are like, oh, it's like, why would you buy Dove soap?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Let's buy something different. So it's like that. So yeah, that's kind of like, how you would think about the transition, how you think about how the problems really change. And that's why thinking about the ICP is really, really important. For a large brand like Mamaearth, they really care about the customer experience. It's not just about sending out messages in bulk. They care about each and every customer that comes and talks to us. So they're looking for a solution that can provide the best type of experience. For them, numbers like FRT, first response time, really, really matter. Right? How quickly can you respond to the customer? They should not be waiting. They should not even wait. They have one of the best first response times in the market. And because they made that as one of their main objectives. So that is not an objective of a SMB brand or a mid-market brand completely. Sure. They work with different things. So that's one way to kind of think through it.
No, yeah, maybe just picking on this, and if you could double click and talk a little bit about your own experience with at LimeChat, how do you get your first 50, 100 customers? How did you think about GTM at that stage, right? What was your definition of your ICP? Who did you say was going to be the ideal customer for LimeChat and this conversational platform, correct? Talk about the first 50, 100 customers and how did you go after them?
Yeah,
because
I think
you also did mention even on the app store of Shopify, there is a lot of competition. It's like literally thousands of apps, right? So you are also up against many options that the brand has to pick from for their problems, right? So both sides, if you can talk a little bit about your ICP and your early GTM thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a super important and in-depth question, actually. There are a lot of factors about, the earliest parts of building the business. First is understanding, what's the type of business you want to build. Why? This is something we learned from our first startup. We built the product and then we sold. And then we did market research. Completely opposite.
Yeah.
So this one, we flipped the switch. We did a lot of market research. We talked around 50, 60 D2c brands before we even started. And we just asked them your biggest pain points. And we asked them in a directed way, obviously. We asked them, tell me about your customer experience. What do you think about customer experience? Do you care about customer experience? Do you not care about customer experience? And if you do care about it, what have you done for it? What do you think you want to do for it? So, questions along that line. You're not selling anything to them. You're just understanding how they think. And when you talk to enough of these people, you get to make a sense. You get to understand, okay, these are the coming trends. These are the trends that I can see. So
in these 50, 60 conversations, were they across SMB, mid-market, and enterprise?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Across domains, across stages, across different parts of the country as well.
So this was a breadth approach of research first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure.
You see, it's exploration versus exploitation, right?
Sure.
So at that first stage, you have to do as much exploration as possible. And then you have to make a thesis about where to exploit, right? So after talking to 50, 60 brands, and again, getting a meeting with these brands is you just have to hustle. You have to just figure it out. Reach out on LinkedIn, have a process around it. Just meet as many people as possible. Now, when you have each conversation, make sure that you get the most out of it. And it's not necessarily you asking the same questions to each brand, but based on the situation, you're getting certain type of information that you need. and you're trying to fit people into different models. Let's say that you have a model for a certain type of brand now that you have gotten from talking to 10 other people. Does the 11th brand relate? If they are relating, then okay, you're kind of moving in the right direction. You've kind of started to build some sort of persona about this type of brand, what type of problems do they face, etc. So now, when we started in March of 2020, that was just the onset of COVID. So all these companies overnight, they had to operate from their homes. Now, typically, a lot of parts of these companies, it works, the marketing division, etc. One division was broken, and that was a support division of these mid-market to large brands, right? Completely, like very small brands, they did not have those divisions in place. They maybe had like one person who was handling the whole customer support. So one thing we understood is brands which had more than 2 to 3 people at least in their teams. That means they had at least maybe 50 conversations or 100 conversations with clients every single day. Those were the people who started picking out certain type of problems. And the problems were, hey, my agent is actually not in front of me, they're at home and they don't do work. I want to measure how they're doing. They keep telling me their internet's not working or the tool that they're using is not that great. Very hard to monitor. And the cost of just administrating them is not good, right? So we understood, oh, could automation help you? We asked them these type of questions. Could automation kind of be a way to kind of solve your problems? What have you thought about automation? And a lot of people actually had tried automation in the past, which is interesting to us. Because it was a problem. If you talk to most people, I would say around 80% people said that I would do automation if it was good. A lot of them had actually tried automation and they said that I don't believe in automation anymore. I said, why? We tried a couple of vendors in the past and we burnt our hands on it. It was not a good experience. We had to cut it down. So we understood that there's a need. You understand, just because people are not using automation today doesn't mean that, oh, automation doesn't work. It's just because maybe the technology did not match the requirements. So can we build the technology? And this is where kind of, our background kicked in. We could think about technology, right? We come from that background. So we felt that, hey, we understood what level of automation would define success for these brands. And is it possible? And the answer we came to was yes. 2019, there was a huge revolution in the way that technology was natural language understanding happens. There was a rise of transformers. And me and my co-founder actually contributed to the research behind that. So we understood the nuance of what works, what doesn't work. And we understood that, hey, we can actually build something. So now when we went off after talking to like maybe 30 brands, we got this basic thesis that these brands want automation, but don't have any good options in the market right now to satisfy their level of experience that they need. We took that thesis, we talked to the next set of 20, 30 brands, and we validated that, yes, they would buy, but they need something that works. So now we started to figure out, so now we did the market research. Next thing is, let's sell. We were building the product side by side, but we're like, no, let's not finish the product. Let's sell first and see what response we get. And then we'll ship something. So we just started going left, right, and center. Again, we've got in some sort of ICP, by the way. These are brands which at least have maybe 50 conversations per day, more than that. Yeah. And these are primarily online focused brands. So I'm not talking, we did not focus too many on brands that had an offline presence at that moment of time. So sure. Keep it small, keep it succinct, and kind of arrange meetings over there. Now, how do you arrange meetings? We got a lot of investor connects, a lot of founder connects, reaching out to LinkedIn, all the people that we talked to in our market research, a lot of them responded back again when we said, hey, we built a basic pitch deck and we gave it to them. Now, over the next 3 months, this is May, June, July, we actually got feedback on that pitch deck to see what worked, what did not work. And there's a lot of insights we got from it. Number one, technology. People don't understand the word AI. It's a very overused, or it's a nuanced term, right? What is good AI? What is bad AI? How much is AI? When can you say that it's AI or intelligence? So when you went in the market and said, hey, we have better AI than the rest, they're like, I don't know what that means. They also have AI. You also have AI. I don't know how to judge. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, you're yet another chatbot. Is that who you are?
You're yet another company out in the market promising them the same things. Our sales is even worse than maybe these larger companies who've been in the market, selling them the dreams and pitches. So we're like, your sales isn't even that good. Why should I even try this out? It's just another chatbot company. So that's when you have to kind of control the narrative then. So some things that we tried out is, for example, we coined a term called level 3 conversational AI, right? Because people were not able to understand. And we turned all the competitors into this lower generation called level 2. And things before that is level 1. Very quickly, I'll just show you, and then it'll become so clear in your head. And this is how it happened in the minds of this D2C founder itself. Level 1 technology is essentially your click-based systems, where you click and the whole map is already hard-coded. You have no ability to write free text. You just click and you find your answer, typically. These are the systems that were there about 10 years ago, the first type of automation systems that came out in the market, right? The next generation, level 2, the first time you can actually type in the middle of your conversation. These are what we call FAQ bots, FAQ-driven bots, or intent-driven bots. So a brand can maybe make a list of maybe 100 FAQs, and whatever you type in free text, it matches that text with the best FAQ in the backend, and it will spit out an answer, right? A problem with this, it's not conversational. It'll always take your text and try to match it with an FAQ in the backend. It'll try to take some steps, maybe 1 or 2 steps based on that FAQ, right? Now, what happened in this is that for certain use cases, this is great. I'll give you an example. Financial institutions, where you're on a bank website, you have to navigate to the right place. Maybe finding a home loan or a gold loan, or how to fill out an application. These are mostly questions you'll ask to help find the right place on the website. It's very confusing. That's where this level 2 AI actually works really, really well. It doesn't have to be conversational in nature. It needs to be FAQ based. So when we had started in the market, we understood that the chatbot space, or the automation market at the time when we started, was 80% fueled by finance, or financial institutions were providing 80% of the revenue of these automation brands. And we said, now we know why. The reason why is that is the space in which it works. Their technology is a good fit. What about the rest? What about D2C? Oh, D2C is not an FAQ-based thing at all. It's very conversation. When you come, you'll ask, hey, I need something for acne. Next question is, do you have oily skin? Do you have rough skin? You might say rough skin. If the bot responds with, hey, you have rough skin, what are you looking for? You don't want to type in, hey, I was looking for face wash. Did you forget? Or I'm looking for acne. Did you forget that? So it needs to remember. It's very conversational in nature, right? And that's what you can provide with level 3 AI. Level 3 AI for the first time brings in a memory, like your human brain. Like, you remember my name is Nikhil. You remember I'm from Blind Chat. You remember the things. You did not come into this meeting knowing that these are the areas I have to store. It's not hard-coded in you that I'm looking for this information, right? But what it is, it's a moldable memory that can remember the conversation and use that to drive the next sentence or the next part of the conversation, and makes it very natural. And by fine-tuning this, you can actually create out experiences which are good enough for the end customer to get their job done. Basically reach that goal state without getting frustrated. So that is what our technology was able to bring to the market. And when we showcase that, right, we were able to kind of convince the person that, hey, this is worth giving it another shot. So we had to control the narrative over there. So that was one major change, one insight that we had when talking to people in our ICP. The second one was, again, this new channel of WhatsApp. We leveraged it really well.
Yeah.
We said that we can help you find outcomes. We kind of hyper-focused on that particular thing, and we ran with it. We combined WhatsApp story with the text story, and that was good enough to convince people to give it a shot. Right. So again, our first 10 to 15 customers, primarily driven from investor connects, primarily driven from people we had reached out to earlier through our, and then LinkedIn as well. It was good enough. So now, when they asked for a demo during these sales calls, it was typically one of either me or Aniket sitting in the back end actually typing out an answer, showcasing the potentials of what they could expect, right? Showcasing how it would be good enough for their end consumers. And so typically that's how we started. So we did the reverse script, market research, then we did the sales. And then once we got our first 10 to 15 clients, we stopped sales. And we said, now we have to deliver on the product. We don't want to like sell to like 50 people and then don't deliver, right? So 2 months after our contracts, we started delivering these bots. And our whole thesis after that was, we have to drive value. We cannot scale until we showcase we're able to solve the problem that people wanted us to solve. Can we give them that experience that was so elusive in the market that kind of drove the customers crazy? And so we just experimented for 3 months. That's it, POCs. And we came up with the answer that yes, we were finally able to give a really good amount of automation, and the brands were happy. So we ran 2-month pilots with the ability to stop. Not a single brand stopped. They went ahead. That gave us confidence. And now another thing in this space you have to understand, especially when you're in SaaS or what we call foundational SaaS, where the potentials are really, really large problem statement. Like for us, we had a very large problem statement, conversational commerce, right? we don't even know what's possible still. And there's so many things that are possible. So once you kind of figure out certain value add, you look at what else is possible. So we understood that a lot of people were coming for sales queries on these bots. 50% was around support, 50% was actually around people trying to discover the right product for themselves. And that got us thinking. So the next 3 months, we worked on how to crack sales. And by the end of March, we actually had the world's first bot that could actually do assisted sales in an completely automated way. And we were actually generating revenue for brands. That was fantastic. And that's when we kind of said, now our product is ready for the next set of sales cycle. So then from there, we went from, I think, 15 brands to maybe 30, 40 brands in the next 3 months. And this is where we got a large brands as well. And again, we stopped sales because there was another problem now. Now that we tracked value, we were able to, and our messaging was good, we were able to get a lot of these brands on board. But what about the implementation? Now, when you're building a customized system, especially with AI and technology, it takes time. And the implementation process is usually long. At that moment of time, our implementation used to take approximately a month to set up for one company, one engineer for approximately a month. Now you can kind of see that this is a very heavy process. So we stopped sales and we're like, okay, we figured out value because in these 3 months, our sales was like 10 times easier than the sales we did last year. But we're going to have a problem of scale. How will we go from 30 brands to 300 brands? Because this process of implementation is a bottleneck. How do we productize this? So now we started productizing it. Now, 12 months later, coming to 2022, we actually have an implementation time of just a couple of hours or within a week. So within a week, we actually go live with the bot end to end. And from a developer perspective, the time it actually takes, the effort it actually takes to build one of these bots is actually quite low. So that's how you kind of have to think about it. Like, how will we also scale? To crack value, then you crack the ICP, you crack the scale as well. So that's the type of thing we kind of thought about and how we kind of went to around 50 customers. And once we so at every stage, there's always another thing to kind of solve or fix. Once we cracked sales at that moment of time, WhatsApp came up with a way to send out messages on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Like template messages, outbound messages. Then it's like, hey, why not marketing? Why not do marketing through WhatsApp? And the initial experiments we did, they were just so much better than an email. It just gave immediate results. So we invested in building out marketing as well. So building a suite of products to kind of combat this channel of WhatsApp. So it became a thesis. And because we were completely focused on doing that, we were able to beat other chatbot players in the market. Right? We were able to beat, other competition in the market. Now, actually getting to the competition part, there are a lot of chatbot players. There are a lot of players in the marketing space also.
Yeah.
So how did we actually, win? I would say against them in a certain way. It was all about the verticalization, to be very honest. So at the time when we started, all the other companies in the automation space are horizontal, and I said 80% of the revenue comes from finance. They don't have the direction nor the will to really go deep down to understand what works and how to build the technology for that particular vertical. So our focus and our technology and our depth of use cases actually helped us win the market at that moment of time, even till today. And because we had started, now that's another important thing was when we started, no one believed in building chatbots for D2C, or no one believed that WhatsApp is a major channel that these D2C brands are going to take. So we took a risk when it wasn't so mainstream, essentially, right? And by the time it became mainstream, like maybe a year later, 12 months or 18 months into our development, if new companies are getting born at that moment of time, they're already far behind of what we have, right? So we were able to always provide a full end-to-end solution as compared to them only giving maybe one part of that solution, maybe only a bot or only marketing or other things like that. So that's also an interesting thing because being first to market in these fundamentally vast new ideas gives you a major advantage. So what I believe in is that with LimeChat, we were the first people to pioneer conversational commerce here in India. And hence, we were able to build faster and capture all the major players in a better way and actually service them with the right tools and sets, which makes it very difficult for someone else to kind of come in and provide that level of experience. And that is evident with kind of, at this point of time, we technically have zero churn within an ICP. So it just goes to show that if you build foundationally and you focus on value and you continuously keep focusing on value, like our next stage is like, if we crack marketing and retention, what's next? How do we crack the CAC problem? So there's a lot of experiments that we've come up with, amazing ones that have already started working, that are showing reduction in CAC if you're starting to put personalized conversations into the buying funnel, into the buying journey. So that will allow us to, increase our ACVs, increase our value addition to the client, and they're much happier using a service like us. So that has kind of been a journey. Marketing, you always figure out, we kept focusing on the message, essentially, that we had to build. And now I think, like I said, around crossing the 200 mark very soon.
No, very fascinating. Thank you so much. There's just so much to unravel there, right? I think, like you said, started with sort of customer support, sales assist, right? Marketing, now CAC and retention. They're just, right? And then you tied that into ACV, which is also very interesting. So I'm just to delve on this a little longer. Were you always ACV focused in the beginning? Correct. And should founders be ACV focused? Or should you just make sure that they're solving the problem in the best fashion and then say, hey, we will upsell, we will cross-sell, we will go else, right? Because again, maybe I'm wearing the investor hat here and asking the ACV number is super critical, right? And you also said it's a verticalized approach. Is the vertical deep enough? And then is your per dollar earned per customer large enough, right? And that's what, everybody wants. You want to build a really large business, $50 million, $100 million in ARR and beyond, correct? These two numbers are very critical. How many customers and what is the ACV, all right? So how early did you worry about ACV, or at what point did that, come into your thought process when you were, product, you were, prioritizing what product and what segment to go after?
Oh, I think that's a fantastic question. It's the age-old question.
Yeah.
When you're starting up. Oh, we went through this a lot because there was a very little market when we started. Insanely low market, especially support automation. Our ACVs were quite low at that moment of time. And even if you look at the market size, when we started, people said, oh, there may be like around 300, 400 companies in your ICP. You're charging them maybe $100 per month. What are you? The TAM is like $10 million. Like, what are you going to do, man? Yeah, that was a big problem at that moment of time. So there's two ways to think about it. If the TAM is big enough, like right now, I think there's a lot of just D2C focused companies that have started up, right? Because they're figuring out, hey, there is enough TAM. There's enough companies out there to buy from our product. Now, there's two things. First of all, the number of companies and the amount you're actually able to take from them.
Yeah.
So now a simple Shopify app, typically, if they only focus on enterprise clients and they're charging maybe $50 a month for a particular problem, they're not going to make a lot of money, right? But if you can take that $50 and make it a useful thing for the smallest of small D2C brands out there, which are the bulk of the brands on maybe Shopify.
Sort of the long tail.
Long tail. Then you can actually monetize. So it depends on first the price point. So if you have a low price point, it's going to be very hard to monetize in D2C unless you're playing in the long tail, right? If you have a more high ACV product or more hands-on product, like for us, there's a lot of effort that goes in setting up any one of these brands, the bot, etc., maintaining support with them, the relationship managers, etc. So you cannot survive on low ACV. We know that we're a high ACV, high touch product at that moment of time. So we can sell to enterprises, we can sell to mid-markets, but not lower than that. But how many are there? So there were not that many. And our ACVs at that moment of time, because we had not cracked enough value. So when you're starting up, the amount of value that Line Chat was generating on day one of going live, and maybe now of maybe day 500, who knows, it's very different.
Yeah,
we're adding much more significant value now, and hence our ability to get more revenue out of these brands is also higher as we have created more value. But at that moment of time, it wasn't there. So in a nutshell, in a TLDR, when we had started, the market was against us because it wasn't there. From an investor perspective, it doesn't make sense. But it was more about the thesis. So we were very thesis driven. They don't look at it today. Look at what the world is going to be like 5 years down the line. Do we believe, like for not just investors or anyone, do we believe if we're putting our life and soul into something, that the world is going to move towards something like conversational commerce in the next 5 years? Because if it does, if the user behavior changes, Arjun, then everything changes. Then a market opens up. That's how market is generated, right? And we call it waves. What are different waves? Waves are basically different markets with different TAMs opening up with people can actually build businesses. We felt that we were at the onset of one of those big waves through conversational commerce. And that's what we believed in. And that's when we raised also. It was not about the numbers. It was not so much about the ACV at that moment of time. It was about does conversational commerce add value? Because if it does, we'll figure out that value. We'll figure out our ACVs. We'll figure out and the market also continue to increase. Can we expand to different geographies? Can we go to the US? There's a lot of brands over there, but what ACV can you sell to them? So that's something that we did not worry about then. It's something we're optimizing for now. Vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. So at this moment of time, we're looking at getting more brands, definitely. And with each brand, how do we create more features for them? How do we create more value that we can monetize on? So our ACV, for example, since the time we started, has almost tripled since day one, right? So that was kind of our approach to this.
No, very valuable, very insightful. Thank you. The other question is being sort of starting off beachhead, building on top of or focused on one platform, right? Of course, a massive platform like Shopify, right? But were there any challenges because it was Shopify first approach? And are you still only Shopify, or are you multi-platform, adaptable? How do you think about that, right? And also, therefore, what would you advise other founders building on these stacks, right? How long should they say, hey, let's build purely on Shopify, there's enough meat here, right? Or let's start thinking about platform number 2 and platform number 3, correct? Because it opens up a lot more customer market.
Yeah. Again, this varies a lot with the type of product you're building. So I'll give you, it's a little about, think about why, the question to ask right now, why would a D2C brand in today's day and age not use Shopify? Right, if you think about that way. What are the pros and cons about using Shopify? Pro is that, it's so easy to set up. Half the thing, 90% of your work is already done. Not even 90, maybe 95%. You have so many apps in part of the ecosystem, just plug and play. The companies that would not use Shopify are the companies which are trying to actually optimize their costs. There are more open platforms out there that can give you the same type of outcome, at least in terms of your website, etc. Like WooCommerce, etc. Magento, and they take less of a cut. So I remember I mentioned the different stages of brands. So as brands are moving into mid-market and later stage mid-market, right? Moving on to enterprise kind of. These brands are really thinking about optimizing. And when we thought about our ICP, our ICP is thinking about optimizing, right? They don't want to put more support agents into the mix. They don't want to expand their team. They want the bot to take care of 70% of the queries, right? So the mindset of the brand at that moment of time is to do cost efficiency. So these type of brands are the ones shifting away from Shopify to go into a different platform. So for us, out of the first 10 brands we actually worked with, I would say half were on Shopify and the other half were not on Shopify. They were using their own custom platform of some sort. So from the get-go, actually, we were not just Shopify oriented. We were multi-platform from the beginning because we were forced to be. Our major ICP was in that segment where just being focused on Shopify would make it very slow for us to grow. Out of our first 30 customers, even today, I would say maybe 60 to 70% of our customers are Shopify. And if I look at the top 10 customers, it would be as much as 40-60, like only 40 of them are Shopify, 60% on custom platforms. So that's for us. But if you have something maybe lower market, lower ACVs, it depends on your pain point. Ours was cost efficiency. Cost efficiency is actually people shifting to a different platform. So based on the value you're adding, it could be a Shopify first play. I know a couple of companies who are building on Shopify first. For example, companies building things like video commerce, right? Very fast moving field right now. How to engage with people, not just by putting pictures, but putting videos. It's so simple. It's like a plugin. So that is something that's used by small brands, upcoming brands, mid-market brands, even large brands, right? So for them, they have a big enough market to actually start off with when they are just a Shopify app, right? So in their case, they started off Shopify first and it works for them. For us, it was multi-platform from day one.
Got it. No, I think very helpful. I think, of course, Shopify is the big platform out there, but there are other platforms for different use cases and for different needs, right? And for cost constraints also that people are using. So one has to have, depending on that, presence on those platforms. Understood. No, I think we've spoken a fair bit. Let's look, I know, and you've also already alluded to it, but let's look towards the future, right? What do the next 5 years hold? correct, for Lime Chat, for this entire ecosystem? What is super exciting? What are the so-called budding trends that you're observing and that you're also betting the company's future on, if I may say so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm excited about the future, and that's why we started this business, Aniket and I. We wanted to work on a problem statement that had large wings, I mean, potential to go in different directions, and it should be challenging that space. If you look at conversational commerce as a thesis right now, it is taking up storm. It is being adopted by some of the largest players on the market. For example, recently we partnered with Meta to make sure that we're helping them drive conversational commerce across India, across the world right now. They have a full thesis on it. Because again, it's like that saying, if something is 10x better, no matter what's going to happen, over a period of time, the world will shift to it because the world likes efficiency. If you go 15 years in the past and you would say, hey, you would get a Swiggy order, you get an order, food delivered to your home, and no price for delivery, you would say it doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't work. It won't work. But that's how it works. It is just, would you ask them, is it better? Yes, it's better. So eventually, on user behavior, it works. The same thing with shopping. If you think about it intrinsically, if I ask you today a very simple question, if you go to a normal D2C e-commerce website and you put onto that homepage, you have to take a lot of effort right now to actually figure out what you want, to figure out taking the steps to read everything and make a decision, right? No one's helping you, no one's guiding you, no one's telling you what you should think about. There are 10 different face washes on that particular platform. Which one's right for you, right? And people do think about it when they're shopping. There's an illusion of choice. There's so many choices to think about, and that's decision fatigue. You have to do effort over that. But here, what if there was an interactive way where you want to buy from this brand? You kind of have a sense of the type of categories you want to buy, right? You can ask about what you care about. You don't know what the brand is going to give you, but you get only one product maybe that it knows it's the best fit for you. You don't have to think about what is this. Is there a better product on this website that fits for me? This is the best one. They're telling me. Their expert is telling me this is the best we got. And if you want to buy, this is what you buy, and this is the best discount we can give. Anything else I can help you with. Eliminating all the decisions from your journey, from your buying. That's essentially what's happening. Today, it's still a certain phase of it. I think in the next 5 years, it's going to adapt and evolve to such a certain degree that you would have your own digital footprint. Based on your purchases across different brands, it already knows. You don't have to even say that I'm looking for a face wash with that. You would get it. You enter that brand, hey, hi, Nikhil. Hi, Arjun. Here are the best options I have for my brand for you. Would you like to buy it? I already have your credit card on file. Just say yes.
Yeah, and obviously Lime Chat is going to be supporting a lot of that.
Absolutely, that's what we want to do. There's so many aspects if you think about it. This is basically doing the development part of it. Now the innovation part is still left to be done, right? Where you can incorporate things like images, voice, user segmentation, personalization, using that data. It's a data-driven kind of system. We talked about data in the beginning, right? How brands want that data. This customer data is super useful for them. You generate more and more of that data. You're able to put the puzzle together and you're able to figure out what people want before they want them, right? And that is what the future is going to be, because like Amazon Prime, you want things now. You click a button, you want it to reach you now. And that's how it is. People are moving towards a more lazier future, but we're going to give it to them. That's how, if it's not us and someone else, we have the chance to kind of build it out. That's how we think about the future. That's why I associate Lime Chat with the ones to build that future out. We at least feel we can. So we should give it a shot. So I'm very excited about what it holds. What will the product look like after a year? I don't know. But what will it look after 5 years? I can only imagine, and I feel happy imagining that future.
Very exciting, and thanks for sharing that. I think we're all equally excited about what are the opportunities, and you guys also building that. So thanks. I think we're at the top of the hour mark, sort of, and just I'll wrap with a couple of questions. One is very specific. Maybe pick one favorite D2C brand of yours and say why, right? And one amazing D2C SaaS company, right? Non-Lime Chat.
Deep question to think about. No, I got two off the bat right on top of my head. So one is, I'm going to have to give a shout out to actually Mosaic Wellness. So Revant at Mosaic. He's one of our earliest customers. He's one of those founders who got it from day one. When you think of the vision, to other people, can they relate to the vision as well? He understood that vision from day one. And hence he was, even though we didn't have a product at that time, he said that you guys are going to build it. I need people who have the potential to build something out. And we got a lot of product feedback from them as well. And the way that he's built his brand, it has been built on the basis of he takes risks, but calculated risks, and hence he's able to grow much faster. We've seen the growth of a lot of brands, very honestly. We work, like I said, we work with 200 of the top brands of the country. We know their numbers. They're one of the fastest growing, and it's for a reason, right? In fact, most of the brands, the first 10, it's very interesting. The first 10 customers we have, right, are actually the fastest growing. 8 of the 10 that we have out of the 200 were the first out of the first 10. It's insane. It just tells you the early adopters are the ones who really make a big
advantage. What delta advantage?
They got the delta advantage, and it's insane. Coming to D2C companies, I think one company that we work very closely with and as well admire and love the founder as well is Chirag from Gopal. I think they're also solving a fantastic problem about how to make the whole checkout experience a lot faster. And the potential of their product working with our product is very high. We already have a lot of common features or products that we've launched together because they're all focused on the customer experience part about how to reduce things like RTO, save money for the brand, efficiency. They have the right type of mindset and they work in a very similar way. They focus on execution. So hence, just love that mindset. It's a huge, great synergy between our two companies. Wish them all the best for the future and hope we can go together.
Oh, lovely, lovely. No, two names to watch out for. Last question, or for our audience to kind of take away, and we'll also reference it, in our posts, etc. What should founders and operators in this space, what should they read? What are go-to blogs, podcasts, resources, anything that you want to shout out, you want to talk about that you learn a lot from, you have learned and continue to learn? So if you want to point out a few things, we will just share it with our listeners as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess based on different phases of, it's very hard to balance the learning aspects and the execution aspects. I think when we're more in the market research phase, you have a lot more time to just read and grasp information. I think at that moment of time, you got to go through a lot of these great books. I think some of the books that really stood out for me, it's very cliche, but it's all the books based on first principles, right? See, I have to go back to the type of company we're building. We're building a company built on first principles. There's nothing there. We are thinking what it's going to be like. So the companies that resonated, the books or the materials or the people who resonated on first principle thinking. For example, the Lean Startup, 0 to 1. These two books are the definition. Why I like them so much. They just talk about first principles. Vinod Costa. So if you look at Coastal Ventures, look at their blog. He has a whole thesis about what the world is going to look like in the next 20 years. It's amazing. You look at the level of detail that the person has thought about. He actually came to ID Delhi to give a talk. And he told about his whole thesis. I was so inspired by it. He talked about 8 different dimensions of life in which innovation is going to happen. Food, travel, everything. Nanotechnology. And each one was so detailed. It's like a huge paper around it. It just tells you about how first principles work. Another way of getting great knowledge is founders who are one step ahead of you. I'm not talking about founders who are like 2 steps ahead of you, maybe 2 funding rounds ahead of you, because they have very different, you don't know all the nuances anymore. They might have forgotten it, or it's just their problems are very different. Have a couple of people. That was something that we actually had a lot of because we were part of the ID Delhi community. So having mentors is very important. Make sure that you grasp as much information. Don't make the same mistakes that they have made. Building on that, make sure that you have a lot of angels. Again, these are founders and then angels who are also invested in your company. Make sure that they invest a little bit and you get a lot of functional advice. Make sure that you have functional angels, people who can help you with GTM, people who can help you with marketing, people who can help you with team building and culture. Understand who are some of the best people out there and get them on board. And it's up to you to convince them. So now my learning has changed mostly from being 80% from books and podcasts to now being 80% from actual people. So it has transitioned over the way. But now it's like 30, 40% on blogs. And these blogs are more on day-to-day things. For example, I'm still looking at the tech part, at engineering part here in the company. So reading things like Pragmatic Engineer has really good learnings for any type of technical leader. And then there's a rule book by Ben Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I think every 6 months, I would recommend a founder to read that. It was just the last couple of appendix pages. Every single time you'll learn something new from it. And that's the magic about that book. So yeah, you got to keep learning to keep moving forward here.
No, great advice on who to take advice from. and also how to keep learning, some great resources and recommendations there as well. I think we'll put that in our notes and our posts for our listeners to, follow through. Thank you so much. This was so fascinating. This was so amazing in so many levels of depth and clarity, and really the excitement is palpable in terms of what you guys are building and how you're feeling about the future. And we share that excitement, and really, really thankful to you, Nikhil, for joining this conversation and sharing your candid thoughts. We wish you all the best at Lime Chat to change the world. All right. And I guess, shout out to all our listeners. I'm guessing you guys are hiring, you guys are building something cool. They can reach out to you on LinkedIn, Twitter, right? Is that right?
Absolutely. We're hiring like crazy right now. There's a lot to build, and thanks for your good wishes. I mean, we need that to kind of move forward. A long journey, really exciting. Great team. I think it's all about the team, very honestly. So when you're hiring, you got to have good people. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was great, and great sharing my thoughts and talking to you as well. Thanks so much.
Lovely conversation. Signing off here from SpecialeTalks, right? D2C is the future, and platforms building for those big, big opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.